Hello and welcome to another XERO How To video. Today's topic is understanding tax rates in Xero and when to use them. So to kick us off, just to quickly explain the different tax rates. If you are not registered for GST, this is probably not really applicable to you, and you should have all your accounts set up as BAS excluded. This is actually, as it says, it's basically excluding every single transaction from a BAS that obviously gets then submitted to the ATO. BAS excluded should be picked up on all transactions that don't have GST, or you are not required to, send these amounts to the ATO. That's where BAS excluded is selected. So the most common example is obviously anytime you pay a loan or pay actually any taxes. These are all BAS excluded. Another example is actually your wages and your superannuation you may pay to employees. Because this actually gets reported in its own item on the BAS statement, this is actually BAS excluded when you are reconciling in Xero. You then have all these other GST tax rates. So you've got GST on income, GST-free income, GST on expenses, and GST-free. These are the most common ones you will find in your Xero file. If your Xero file has been running for a few years, you may actually find there's a few extra ones. You might actually see GST on capital and GST on capital expenses. This is where, say, if you were to buy a motor vehicle or a larger asset, you'd obviously select GST on capital. But when they introduce simpler BAS, you're actually no longer required to report the assets that you buy and the GST paid on capital at a separate item, and it's all kind of reported under the one item these days. So that's why you may see only these four, but you may be aware there is a few other tax rates out there. Still all kind of the same concept. So if you have GST on income or GST on expenses, this is picking up 10% of either the income or expense, and that's what gets on charge to the ATO. Obviously with income, you usually on charge the 10% of GST onto your customer's invoice or your client's invoice, which then the client pays to you and you then pass on to the ATO. With GST on expenses, it's the opposite way around. So when you do pay an expense, you then get to claim back the 10% of GST if there was a GST on that expense. When it comes to the GST-free items, there's not many around, but there is definitely some out there to be mindful of. So for example, you might find GST-free income is any interest that you might receive into your bank account. And the other side of that is all bank fees are GST-free as well. Be mindful though, there is some payment services that do charge GST, and your merchant fees are generally GST on expenses as well. Some other GST-free items to be aware of is, for example, any taxes you pay. That might include your ASIC fee if you are in a company. It may also include taxes straight to the ATO. These are all GST-free items, or actually in most cases BAS excluded. There's no GST on any council rates, water rates, and I am just trying to pick a few off the top of my head. If you're not sure, you are more than welcome to reach out to us, but obviously if you do a quick Google search, you'll usually find your answer as well. But if you are registered for GST, let's jump into Xero and walk you through how they look in Xero. So what I have open here is my demo company. I have just opened up an invoice. So like I said, if you are registered for GST, you're most likely on charging the GST to your customers. Obviously, if you are in a business where you think you're in a business that you don't have to charge GST, obviously it's really important to make sure that that is correct. Otherwise, the ATO will come after you. So most commonly, businesses around cafes, or if you're in business around water cartage, or you're in the medical industry, there are certain obviously fields that actually don't charge GST. So you would have a lot of your income under GST free. Now, when it obviously is in any other type of business that do charge GST, it's really important that you're obviously selecting your sales account and making sure that the tax rates do have GST on income. I am just going to go and edit this invoice. So by selecting a revenue type account, when I use the drop down for tax rates, you'll see that there's no GST on expense able to be used. That's because it only allows you to use the income rates because I've got a revenue account. And it's also got BAS excluded because, like I said, there are some scenarios where you don't have to report that transaction to the ATO, so it won't be included on your BAS. Really important as well, just to highlight, to understand the difference between tax exclusive and tax inclusive. So for example, you may have come up with your own pricing and this may include GST, but really important that you're on charging this GST amount to your customers and you're not incurring this yourself, just because obviously it gets charged to the client. The client then pays you, and this is the amount that you then pay off to the ATO. So you don't want to be short changed at the end of the day. So if you've got it included in your overall pricing, then fantastic. Make sure you tick tax inclusive. But if you have kind of scoped out your pricing based off your time, all that kind of thing, you do want to make sure that you've got the tax exclusive, and then you're obviously adding GST on top of that. So this is a really common way to do it if you're in a service-based industry, whereas you'll find most product industries are tax inclusive. So for example, when you walk into a shopping center, most of the items, you'll never ever really find an item that charges tax at the register. It's always included in the overall price. To make sure that your tax rates are actually up to date with your accounts in Xero, you can go to the accounting tab and then chart of accounts. If you've used Xero's default chart of accounts, these should all be correct, as well as if you've used, I guess, your accountant or bookkeeper to set up your Xero file. But if you have done this yourself, it's probably worth double checking that you have got the GST rates correct, because obviously you're in business because you're great at what you do, but this kind of tax rate area can be obviously a bit more tricky. So you can always review and you can change them. So for example, this interest income is obviously showing GST on income, which is not correct. So you can actually click into it and change that to GST-free. Jumping back into my dashboard, I am going to show you what that looks like in the bank reconciliation screen. So what you'll find here, obviously like you saw with the invoices, this I am confident that my invoices are picking up GST correctly, because we can prove that by showing you that the revenue account that we've selected has a tax rate of GST on income. So if we were to reconcile these amounts, then perfect. We can trust that the GST is being reported correctly on our BAS statement. But what you will also find is there may be a few other items down here that, and I'll show you. So if I'm searching for central parking, let's just put this straight to our motor vehicle expenses for now. Straight away, as soon as I select my account, you see here the tax rate changed. A really common example though, for one to be mindful of, I'm going to just go find one on the next page. Say for example, this was actually for a subcontractor. Really important that you obviously receive the invoice from your subcontractor, but a lot of the time you'll find that there is subcontractors that aren't yet registered for GST. Maybe they haven't hit their threshold yet, or you will have subcontractors that are registered for GST, even if it is from the get-go. Subcontractors, you can actually have seen before split two accounts. You might have an account for subcontractor GST-free and subcontractor GST. This just makes it really easy, because as soon as you select it, like I said, it picks up the tax rate that's been allocated in the chart of account section. So say for example, I have got my account and I've only got the one account and it's all GST on expenses, but we know for a fact ACL conferences have given us an invoice and there is no GST on this. It's really important that you actually go GST free. This way it's still capturing that we've got the expense, but we can't actually claim back any GST on this amount that we've paid them, because they haven't charged us any GST. A really great way to make sure that your tax rates are correct is actually using third-party softwares like HubDoc. HubDoc actually is free with any premium or any, I think actually any Xero subscription these days, or perhaps it might be premium. I do have to double check on that one. But using something like HubDoc is a great way to make sure that your tax rates are being selected correctly. It will actually break down, especially on, for example, like your insurances or registration for motor vehicles where there is a GST-free portion on those expenses. It will actually break that down accurately, so you're claiming the correct amount of GST and reporting the correct amount to the ATO as well. So utilizing softwares like that is a great idea. Obviously though, you can change them manually when you are reconciling your bank account, but it is really a great idea to be familiar with your tax rates and how to change them within Xero. That kind of concludes our video for the day. So do remember to like and subscribe. We do have a lot of great Xero content out on our YouTube channel now, but of course we do have everything else on there. So as you can see, we've got anything around investments, financial positions, and of course business related content. So do be sure to check that out. And as always, if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at Smart Business Solutions. Thank you.